Okay, so this is a follow-up to a Redditor who had asked about some left-hand patterns that people were using to comp with, and I had mentioned that I would look at a little more in detail if he had some specific examples, and he had some. So I'm going to look at the first one here real quick by, I guess, a YouTuber and Twitch streamer called Lara6683, doing, I guess, an intro for Tokyo Ghoul, which I'm assuming is an anime from my quick Googling. I'm not familiar with that one, but here we go anyway. And hopefully I didn't completely screw up the transcription of the right hand. I'm focused mostly on the left hand because that's what's important. These patterns can work over anything for improv and lead sheets and comping, that kind of thing. So maybe in editing I'll throw up the snippet of what I'm about to transcribe of her playing it much more quickly than I'm going to try to. But what she's doing is she's basically just hitting the octave, jumping up an octave, and rolling 1, 5, 1, 3, and then going back down. And then just repeating and so on for the chord progression, which is just 4 chords. Essentially, it's kind of like a 1, 2, 3, 7, 1. So one of the things that she does that I find kind of interesting is that she is hopping her thumb. So you'll notice I play it like this and I cross over to my 2, 1, 2, 5. She actually does this and then hops her thumb at the top. So it's viable. To me, that creates a little extra tension in my hand. I think probably the reason she does it is to keep her bearings. It's sort of a, I don't want to say crutch because that makes it sound negative, but it's sort of a proprioception crutch to give her bearings of the keyboard, because her hand never has to leave this position while she's reaching to grab that third, and that means that it's much easier for her to jump down and grab the next chord without sort of losing her place. But I think you can have the best of both worlds, because like I could play this without looking, make these octave jumps, and not lose my, you just have to practice that to, and not lose my bearings, and not have the tension. So that's the thing. So let's put it over, put the melody over there. Whoops, I didn't get the octave. The second bar is where things get kind of interesting, because there's this, we'll just look at the first 3 notes in the melody there. So that'll be the first 2 beats. So cut that tie going over into the third beat. This is the most common way that you see approximated triplets. It's kind of a 2 against 3, but not quite. It's very approximated. So like if it was a triplet, if that would it'd be a triplet. Those should be even, 3 even notes across the space of 2 beats. But it's frequently approximated this specific way, where the first 2 notes are the same length, basically a dotted 8th note, and then the last note is an 8th note. That gets you pretty close. Now, it doesn't look like a dotted 8th note because the second note is just a 16th tied to an 8th note, which is the same thing. It's a dotted 8th note. So, I see this written in a lot of contemporary music in place of triplets. It kind of gives a different feel, and I'm pretty sure that's what she's doing. It's not quite triplety. And then it continues, because you'll notice that third note actually does tie to yet another one. And the last note of the melody there is not on the beat. I assume this is exactly how it sounds in the original. I haven't listened to the original. But anyway, that's just a coordination thing. It's going to be interesting to line that up. You just have to practice to be able to get the coordination across the hands, because you're subdividing 16ths a lot. Almost everything falls off of a 16th. notice that the melody doesn't line up with what's the eighth notes, the straight eighth notes in the left hand, almost ever. Except right there. And then it doesn't line up again there. So you've got to be splitting those sixteenths. You've got to be subdividing all the time to figure out where that's at. But basically that's what the nice thing is about these approximated triplets, is that you can subdivide them very cleanly into even sixteenths. So that's all that there is to that. So let's move on to the next one. Okay, so let's look at this second thing that she did. Now, I looked at this, watched it a couple of times, trying to figure out exactly what she did, and then I kind of decided it doesn't matter, because conceptually what she's doing is a lot more important than exactly what she's doing, because ultimately it's all going to kind of sound the same, and more importantly, you should be able to use this idea and realize how flexible it is and be able to use it in different ways, not exactly what she's playing, but in lots of different ways to get different effects. So basically she's just playing an octave and she's just alternating notes. So it could be something like, now that's just straight alternating eighth notes. You could get slightly more rhythm. Right. You could do these strange groupings of twos, where the middle notes in the beat are grouped in twos. Kind of hard to explain. It's basically coming off of all of the ands. I think one that I didn't write down is this. So let's look at that one in particular as a good example of what I'm kind of doing when I do that. I'm thinking about this bass line. And then I'm just filling in the rest of those beats, so I have steady eighth notes, but I'm still getting, or mostly steady. There's some extra notes in there, but I'm still getting that feeling. Right, so it's the same rhythm. So you can see how I'm basically just putting extra notes in there. Most of them are the upper octave, but some of them are in the lower octave. I'm just not accenting the ones that aren't this. So you just have to figure out where you're going to throw your accents. It's very important to know where you want to put those accents. And these different patterns are going to work better over different ones of these rhythms that she's got. So that would probably work well over the first little melody bit, because there are anticipations in there. Basically an anticipation is if you play a note slightly ahead of the beat. So you'll notice I have these sixteenths tied from the E of 1 into the downbeat of 2. Those are ahead of the beat, so it's not. And if you have those anticipations, you might want to support it with the left hand with the same sort of idea. Right? So some variation, like the exactness doesn't matter, but that helps. I think in the second bar where you have this sort of 2 against 3 feel, it helps to, you accentuate that a lot by having a more straight, that kind of rhythm, because then you really feel the tug of the 3 against the 2. And then you can go back. So you kind of go back and forth between those ideas. And that's actually me changing every bar. You could change within the bar. So I could start with one of these kind of off kilter. So the first one isn't straight ahead. It's this 1 and 2 and then I go into 1 and 2 and. So could pick that other pattern where I have 1 and 2 and then jump into the 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, right? So it's just important to understand that's all that's happening. You're using these kind of steady eighth notes, and you're just changing where the accents are, and whether you're playing the top and bottom octave, and that's kind of helps with the accents too. That's kind of all there is to that. So I think I'm going to cut this one here. I might look at that other one a little bit later.